You guys look good today, by the way.
You too, Barry. Since you live on a hill, you can practice your downhill putting in your room there.
Hey, you know what? Somebody plucked my house the other day and broke my siding.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I'm really bummed out about that, but I'm going to get the golf course to pay for it.
Wasn't me.
Yeah.
Terry, you're good to start.
Okay, well, let me start by saying good morning to everyone and thank you for participating in the procurement strategy for Aboriginal business. My name is Perry Kocis and I'm with Business Link. And Business Link is a not-for-profit social organization that helps young entrepreneurs and established Indigenous businesses get more familiar with the federal procurement process. So that's specifically my role within Business Link, is to work with Indigenous procurement-ready businesses to help them get qualified and hopefully get some work through the federal procurement process. I've been with Business Link for a year now, and it's a great organization. A lot of good people. There's about 25 of us working with Business Link right now. Before I go any further, I'd like to acknowledge the lands that we're working on here. And it's the First Nations lands, primarily of Treaty 8, Treaty 6, and Treaty 7, and also part of Treaty 4 and Treaty 10. We'd also like to acknowledge the Métis folks of Alberta. I think that's primarily where our audience is coming from today, and for you folks who are participating in the webinar. So thanks again for coming. I'd also like to start with maybe just a brief safety moment, if I could. And given the environment today with the COVID situation, my safety moment is kind of around the 3 W's, which is wash your hands, it is wear a mask when you can't social distance, and the third W is watch your distance. So that's our safety moment for the day. And I know there isn't one specific person that can change the whole world with this whole COVID situation, but I think if we all do our little part, you know, at least we're all doing something about it. So thank you again for joining us today in this webinar. There's a couple folks on the screen that you see there. That would be Mike Ricci of Procurement Canada, and he is out of Ottawa today. Thank you for joining us today, Mike. And we also have Kris Ruiter, who is with the Office of Medium and Small Enterprise and is an expert when it comes to navigating around the buy and sell website. Just maybe a little bit of house cleaning things. If you'd like to ask a question, we have the chat box at the bottom of the screen, and you can type your question in and we'll answer your question either over the screen, or if it's a more detailed answer required for your question, then what we'll do is we'll interrupt the speaker, and then we can take your question and answer it right there and then. I'll also like to acknowledge the Government of Canada and also the Government of Alberta, who provides funding to Business Link so we can help our young Indigenous entrepreneurs get started, as well as our established Indigenous businesses within Alberta, but the Government of Canada, as you know, is countrywide. So having said that, I'd like to maybe introduce Mike first of all, and Mike's going to provide a little bit of, well, he's going to provide an overview of the procurement strategy for Aboriginal businesses, and Mike has some slides that he'll put up on the screen, and off we go. So having said that, take it away, Mike.
So thanks very much for having me. So my name is Mike Ricci. I'm a Senior Program Officer in Business Development at Indigenous Services Canada. And we manage the procurement strategy for Aboriginal business. So that's what I'll be talking to you a little bit about today. Sorry, I'm just gonna go next. So I'll be talking a little bit about our role at Indigenous Services Canada, an overview of the policy, The mechanisms underneath that policy, the eligibility requirements for Indigenous businesses, registering in our Indigenous business directory, the auditing that goes along with that, and then that actually shouldn't say identifying capacity. That should be additional resources that you can take advantage of as an Indigenous business owner. So the first slide here is kind of the raison date for our branch. It's we have within our branch, we have numerous Indigenous economic development initiatives, including federal Indigenous procurement, or the procurement strategy for Aboriginal business, which we hope will lead to new business creation, growth, employment, and economic reconciliation, and will hopefully lead to positive socioeconomic outcomes and increased self-reliance. So our role at Indigenous Services Canada is twofold. We help other federal government departments fulfill their Indigenous procurement requests by acting as the Indigenous Participation Component Authority on request. So I'll get into that a little bit later when I get into the mechanisms of the policy. We provide evidence of Indigenous business capacity to fulfill a particular requirement. So we do that mainly, we manage a federal Indigenous business directory, and we can use that to determine capacity for particular goods and services. We've also commissioned studies from the Canadian Council for Aboriginal Business and some other national Indigenous organizations around Indigenous business capacity, so we can tap into that as well when we're looking for capacity to fulfill a particular requirement. We provide advice and guidance on successfully implementing the Indigenous procurement policy throughout the government of Canada. So we act as a point of contact for federal procurement officers who need advice on implementing the policy. We educate procurement specialists on the benefits of using the procurement strategy for Aboriginal business. So we have a similar presentation as this, and we go around to other federal government departments explaining what the policy is and how they can take advantage of it. And we maintain a network of over 100 procurement specialists who act as Indigenous procurement coordinators within their respective departments. On the flip side, so we help eligible Indigenous businesses enhance their business capacity by educating them on the Indigenous procurement policy. So that's what I'm here today, to explain to you what the policy is and how you can take advantage of it. Providing tools and mechanisms to increase your visibility as an Indigenous business owner. Encouraging partnerships and joint ventures to increase capacity and skills development. So I'll get into that a little bit later when I'm talking about the eligibility requirements. So under our policy, an Indigenous business and a non-Indigenous business can joint venture to bid on contracts. And we intervene on procurements to advocate for Indigenous participation and thereby enable businesses to demonstrate their capabilities and enter into new supply chains. So our office is part of a number of interdepartmental committees on federal procurement, and will assess large upcoming projects to see if there's an opportunity to include some sort of Indigenous participation within those contracts. So many of you might already know, but in December 2019, the Prime Minister made a commitment, and I'm going to read it verbatim, to work with the Minister of Indigenous Services and the President of Treasury Board to create more opportunities for Indigenous businesses to succeed and grow by creating a new target to have at least 5% of federal contracts awarded to businesses managed and led by Indigenous peoples. So right now we're working very closely with our counterparts at Public Services and Procurement Canada and Treasury Board on developing a strategy to implement this 5% Indigenous procurement target that was announced by the Prime Minister just a short time ago. So what is the federal Indigenous procurement policy? It was launched in 1996 as the procurement strategy for Aboriginal business, and it has been instrumental in encouraging Indigenous businesses to procure with the federal government. It leverages existing government procurement needs to create opportunities to generate wealth within Indigenous communities and close socioeconomic gaps by increasing Indigenous participation within procurement processes. And I think the next few slides, first I'm going to be talking a little bit about the eligibility requirements, and then after that, the mechanisms underneath the policy. So is your business eligible? So Indigenous businesses, to meet the criteria under the federal government, would be any type of company. It could be a sole proprietorship, limited company, cooperative, partnership, or nonprofit organization in which Indigenous people have majority ownership and control, meaning at least 51%. And if they have 6 or more employees, at least a third would be Indigenous. In the case of joint venture agreements, the joint venture would have to maintain 51% ownership and control by an Indigenous person, and 33% of the content of the value of the work would be performed by the Indigenous business. So now moving on to the mechanisms underneath the policies. So the first thing you need to know is there's a thing called set-asides. Set-asides is when a procurement is restricted in competition only for Indigenous suppliers. So the procurement is limited, so only Indigenous suppliers can compete. A set-aside would be mandatory if the procurements are destined for an area, community, or group in which Indigenous people make up at least 80% of the population, and where the Indigenous population will be the recipient of the goods, service, or construction. On the flip side, voluntary set-asides are very broad, so they can be employed by a department if Indigenous business capacity exists and operational requirements, best value, prudence, probity, and sound contracting management can be assured. So that can be used anywhere. It could be used downtown Calgary. If Indigenous business capacity exists, a department may voluntarily set aside a procurement. They may do so in order to achieve that 5% target that I was talking about earlier. So it's a means of them achieving their Indigenous procurement targets. Yeah, so that's a voluntary set aside. The last one there is conditional. So when we're unable to determine whether capacity exists for a particular good or service, a department can take advantage of a conditional set aside. So that would be open to all businesses, Indigenous and non-Indigenous. But if 2 or more Indigenous businesses submitted a bid, then it would be restricted in competition to the Indigenous business owners. So a little bit more of what you need to know as an Indigenous business owner when it comes to federal procurement is standing offers and supply arrangements. And Kris can talk to you in detail about those 2 things later. But what I really want to highlight on these is, so they're usually established, they're lists that are established when there's a reoccurring need within the federal government for a particular good or service. And how Indigenous set-asides are incorporated is our office will advocate for including an open stream, Indigenous and non-Indigenous suppliers, and an Indigenous only stream. So only Indigenous suppliers within a particular list or set of requirements. Sorry, I'm just gonna move the, my screen's blocking a little bit of the text here. Just give me a second. Yeah, so are there any questions on that so far? I'm going to move on to the next slide now. Is there any questions in the chat? No? Okay. So a little bit more on the mechanisms. We also, I was talking about earlier, we sit on a number of interdepartmental committees to advocate for Indigenous participation on major projects. And that's where we looked for subcontracting opportunities on these large projects. So usually these are done within large multi-million, billion-dollar, multi-year projects, and we'll look for opportunities where prime contractors would have to do a certain amount of Indigenous subcontracting for particular goods and services throughout the duration of the contract. It could also be as well, Indigenous hiring or skills development opportunities can be incorporated into those contracts. But as an Indigenous business, what you would need to know is there is those opportunities for subcontracting within those large projects as well. So the next step as an Indigenous supplier is what you would want to do is you would want to register in our Indigenous business directory. So any contract that's limited in competition to Indigenous suppliers under our policy, prior to contract award, the supplier would need to be registered in our directory. It's fast and easy. It takes approximately, not even, it says 20 minutes on here, but not even 20 minutes. It takes about 10 minutes to register. Once registration is complete, our department usually reviews and confirms registration within 48 hours. So it's increased visibility for your company. It's a search engine available to private industry, municipal, provincial governments, as well as the federal government. So when I was talking about earlier, when we look for Indigenous business capacity, this is one of the main tools we use to identify capacity. So we'll use the Indigenous Business Directory to search for particular suppliers for particular projects. As well, when I was talking about those subcontracting opportunities, prime contractors will come to us looking for Indigenous suppliers for particular work, and we will refer them to this directory as well. It's also a means of building partnerships, so you can use the Indigenous Business Directory to seek out partnerships and joint ventures with other Indigenous businesses, and staying informed as well. So we will regularly email businesses of upcoming opportunities, events, and particular procurements or opportunities they may be interested in on buy and sell. So how does ISC confirm your legitimacy as an Indigenous business? So we do 3 types of audits as part of our program. So the first one is a pre-award audit. It's mandatory in cases that a procurement is valued over $2 million or greater. And a post-award audit as well is tied to the $2 million or greater contracts, but it can be requested by another government department at any point in time for any value procurement. There's also a random audit. So a department can request that a company be audited at any point in time when they're registered in the directory. And it's not as scary as it sounds. It's not a big, intense CRA audit. It's just to confirm the Indigenous status of the firm and that they meet the eligibility requirements set out by our program. So it's usually completed, depending on how quickly the company can provide the information to our auditors, it's typically completed within a week or 2 at most. So next steps after registering in our Indigenous Business Directory, the first thing would be to go to buyandSell.gc.ca and talk to our colleagues at the Office of Small and Medium Enterprise. So luckily we have Kris Ruiter today from OSME who will talk to you a little bit about navigating buy and sell. And then there's also registering in the SRI. So you're going to want to, after you register in the Indigenous Business Directory, you'll also want to register in this separate database that's called the Supplier Registration. I always want to say index, but I think it's called Supplier Registration Information. So you're going to want to register in that as well, and Kris can talk to you a little bit about that later. The next thing you're going to want to do is contact our colleagues at Public Services and Procurement Canada's Contract Security Program. So a lot of contracts for the federal government, whether it just be reliability status or secret clearance, there's sometimes some sort of security requirement associated with contracts. So you'll want to just get a little bit more information on what that entails, and they offer 60-minute webinars that you can sign up for. So their contact information is there, and I'll ensure that this deck is distributed following this presentation because there's a lot of links that you can click on and information on here that might be useful for you. And then the third thing on here is talking about suppliers who want to promote their goods and services is for suppliers who want to sell their goods for under $25,000 or their services under $40,000. So they're called low dollar value procurements from the Government of Canada. And Kris, are you going to touch on that a little bit later on in your presentation as well, or should it do?
Sorry, Mike, sub 25?
Yeah, the under 25, you're going to be touching on that a little bit and how to navigate for those opportunities, correct?
Yes.
Okay, so Kris will be talking to you a little bit about that later, about navigating those low value procurements. A little bit additional resources. So we've been emailing, like I said, businesses registered in our directory, COVID-19 related resources. So there's resources on this PowerPoint as well that we've been sending to our businesses. If you have goods or services related to the pandemic. I'm just going to kind of glide over that. And like I said, my deck will be made available later on, so you can feel free to contact me or click on the links that are embedded within this presentation. So if you're looking for funding as an Indigenous business, there are things called Aboriginal Financial Institutions, which is managed by NACA. So you're going to want to look into that. And there's also COVID-19 specific funding. And the Aboriginal Financial Institutions would be your main place to go to look for more information on that. Business Development Canada has an Indigenous specific loan that you might want to explore as well. So their link is there. And then if you're looking for funding, there's sometimes a lot of local banks offer unique programs designed for Indigenous entrepreneurs as well. Just some additional resources here. So the first link here is there's this hub that's created by our colleagues at ISED. So their name is Innovation, Science and Economic Development Canada. And they have an Innovation Canada platform. And it's like if you click on that first link, it asks you a bunch of questions. Are you an Indigenous business? Are you looking for this? Are you looking for that? And then it provides you with a tailored list of programs and services that might be of interest to you. So very cool. I highly recommend you go check that out. I think they also have provincial and municipal resources on there as well, not just federal. If you're searching for permits and licenses, there's a link there. If you are at the stage of thinking of exporting your goods or services, Global Affairs has a specific Indigenous program that you can contact. And CRA also has a contact if you need help with your taxes as a small business owner as well. The contact information is there. Last one here, for additional resources, there is the Government of Canada's Indigenous Skills and Employment Training Program. So that's our colleagues at Employment and Social Development Canada. So if you're looking at Indigenous skills and training programs, I would recommend you go check out that link. And we also have an inventory here in our office of other types of Indigenous hiring, training, and skills development programs. So if you're interested in that, feel free to contact me or our general inbox that's listed below, and I'd be happy to provide that for you. So if you need more information, you can contact me directly or our general inbox. It'll end up probably coming to me anyway, which is indigenousprocurement@canada.ca. And there's a link there as well that leads to our website, including registering in the Indigenous Business Directory as well. So that's it for me. Thank you very much.
All right. Well, thank you, Kris. Yeah, I just want to go back to Business Link with some of the stuff that Kris or that Mike mentioned just now. A lot of those funding opportunities and where to go and stuff like that, we have those listed at the Business Link website. So you can always go there and navigate yourself around. And it is very, very helpful when you're looking for grant money, funding, research, business planning for young entrepreneurs and also businesses that are established all the way. One of the things I should have mentioned that Business Link does hold a lot of webinars that are free of charge, that are very helpful to established business owners. And again, I would encourage you to go to the buy and sell website, but to the Business Link website. Those things are all on there and you should be able to find, and they'll give you guidance on where to go, or you can chat live, speak with somebody live at Business Link, and they'll certainly point you in the right direction for that stuff. The other thing I'd like to mention is that all of the services at Business Link are free of charge. So we don't charge any kind of fee for our service and our guidance and our direction to help young entrepreneurs and businesses that are established already. Yeah, that's all I wanted to say at the moment. So I see Kris is set up and ready to go. So I will turn it over to Kris for now. And if I see an opportunity where I think a question needs to be answered, maybe Kris, if it's okay with you, I'll just kind of put up my hand or give you a little bit of interruption, and maybe you can elaborate or just explain a little bit more about that particular item.
Yeah, for sure. No problem, Perry. Yeah, jump in and throw any questions you want my way. Keep me on my toes, whatever you want to do, Perry. Not a problem. So yes, thank you. Thanks, Perry. Thank you, Business Link, for having us in today, and Mike, of course, for your presentation. We've worked a few times together before, so it's nice to do that again. And so my name is Kris Ruiter. I am the Chief of Stakeholder Engagement with what's called the Office of Small and Medium Enterprise, which is part of Public Services and Procurement Canada. Really, really long title, which is why my business card kind of has information on both sides of it. But essentially what we are is an outreach team. We're a team designed to help businesses navigate federal government procurement. Essentially how it works is the government gives our department, Public Services and Procurement Canada, the authority to buy on behalf of the entire government. Now our department, our minister will then delegate some of that authority. So they give some of that authority to all the other departments and agencies that exist in the federal government, so that they can do some of the purchasing on our own. What's important to note about that is they they have that ability. And when we talk about under $25,000, that's a lot of where those departments and agencies are doing that work. So they're going to do those procurements on their own. Now, if it's over their authority, what they do is they send it over to our department, Public Services and Procurement Canada, and we do the procurement for them. So they define what they need and what they want to buy, and then they send it over to us, and we go help do the tendering and the contracting for them, so they can get the goods or services that they require. Now, my team, we cover Alberta, Saskatchewan, Manitoba, Northwest Territories, and Nunavut, and we are the outreach team. So we're here to support businesses. So we do everything from webinars like this to presentations. Sort of pre-COVID, we were, a lot of public opportunities. We've run a few different types of events. We did 3 Indigenous business reverse trade shows, 2 in Edmonton, 1 in Calgary, and we do one-on-ones. So we'll sit down with a business. Pre-COVID, it was a lot in person. Now we're very virtual. So we would do kind of like what we're doing right now, but sit down one-on-one and talk a little deeper about the industry that the business is in. And where to look for information on our website, and how to find those opportunities, and what are some of the steps involved with trying to be involved with federal government procurement. And so that's where we get into the one-on-one a little bit more detail. So what I'm going to do today, I'm going to walk through some of our tools and some of our information, probably a little guidance on where that is. But if there's any interest, beyond and going a little bit deeper, please reach out. I would be happy to do a one-on-one with you and your business and walk through where some of those more refined areas might be for you. As Mike mentioned, we do have a number of procurement tools and instruments out there. He mentioned standing offers and supply arrangements, and you'll see that there's really 3 main ones that we use. So request for proposal, standing offer, and supply arrangement. They're just different ways in which we procure the services. So request for proposal, it really is asking for a proposal from the business, and it forms a contract. At the end, a contract is awarded, and it's really defined as how much of something or how long of something, and it really gets defined within the contract that's awarded. A standing offer is a list of suppliers. Now, a standing offer is competed at the beginning, and then we essentially establish all the terms and conditions. When we use this one, when we know we're going to buy a lot of something, but we have no idea how much, when, or where. So the example I really like to use is something like paper. We know we're going to need paper. Every department and agency needs paper, but we don't know when, where, or how much. So we don't know if it could be 40 boxes of paper for Canada Revenue Agency in Calgary versus 20 boxes for Correction Services Canada in Saskatoon versus PSPC in Ottawa. We don't know. So we create as a standing offer, so that when we need it, we essentially do what's called a call up. It's like a purchase order. We do a call up saying, okay, we need 40 boxes in Calgary. Now it'll go to the business that's on the list, and all the terms and conditions are set. So the pricing's already set, how long the business has to deliver based on when they get the purchase order, the call up. And so everything is set in place. So it allows us to purchase when we need it. It's as and when requested. So when we need it, then we put those in, and the paper gets delivered. Supply arrangement's a little different. It is a list of suppliers, but it is when we know an industry that we want to work with, but we don't have the exact requirements. So what we do is we don't compete it with pricing. We essentially establish who can do the work in the industry. So if we talk about computer programming, so we know we need computer programming. We just don't know if we need, HTML programmers versus JavaScript versus COBOL versus whatever. It could be any of the ones that are out there, any of the different languages. So we don't know if it's one of those languages. We don't know which department's going to need it. So when we get the final requirement of who, which language, and what, then we'll go out to those list of suppliers and have a little mini competition. Those suppliers will bid on that, and then we'll award the contract based on that. So there's really the two differences between the standing off and the supply arrangement. They're similar in the way that they're lists, but one establishes everything up front, and the other one does a two-step. It's half, sort of the key information gets set up, and then we do a mini competition within those suppliers. So that's a little bit of the sort of procurement basics of how we look at different ways of procuring this information. Mike also mentioned the supplier registration information, and that really is your first key step. If you are new to the federal government and are considering selling to the federal government, then that really is truly your first step that you want to take. So everything is on our buy and sell website, which is why we're going to navigate some of this, because there's everything you could possibly want to know about federal government procurement, and everything you never in your life would want to know about federal government procurement is in here. And it can get really, it's really full of information. And no business in their right mind would design a site with a horizontal nav bar. You know how normally you have a drop down of 4 or 5 options? Well, if you hover over the 4 businesses here, this is the drop down box you get. It's enormous. And it's mainly because all of our information is public. So we want it available so that everyone can have access to it. But of course, it gives it an incredible amount of information. So the first thing on this drop-down box that I want to point out is the supplier registration. So doing your supplier registration does 2 things. One, it gets you into our main database of suppliers. Now, what Mike was talking about with the PSAB program, doing that registration gets you into the PSAB program database, and that's really important. This one gets you into the main database of all suppliers. Doesn't guarantee a contract, but it does allow for buyers to be able to see who's out there and who can do what work, okay? The other thing it does, it gives you what's called a procurement business number. The procurement business number is how we essentially work with a supplier when it comes to procurement. Fundamentally, it's how we pay you. We pay you through the procurement business number. It's also required if you're going to register in a couple of our procurement instruments, like pro services, or one that's called task-based informatics services. That's done. The only way to register and bid to become part of those supply arrangement lists is to have your procurement business number. So this one is a really, really important first step here, okay? The other things in here is our regional offices. So you're meeting me today. I have a team of about 6 people that are in here, plus we have offices across the country. So as I mentioned, we cover the Prairie provinces in the north. We have colleagues in BC and that cover BC and Yukon. Then we have Ontario, Ottawa specifically, Quebec, and Atlantic. So you can find that information through here. If you wanted, to follow on a little more information around the procurement strategy for Aboriginal business, it's right here. If you're curious what we're doing in green procurement, that's right here. If you really wanted to know about how we do procurement in, you can even take a look at our supply manual. Really, it's how our procurement officers conduct procurement. And so you can find all that information right there. And if you really, really want to have some great reading, I say it a bit in jest, but all of our clauses and conditions are all right here. So if you ever want to look up an actual clause that we're using in a contract, you can actually find them all here. So it is all accessible for you, okay? So those are just a few of the things that you can navigate through. But I would say for sure that one of the first things you want to do is the supplier registration. It's about a 20-minute process. It's 2 steps. You need your legal business name and either your federal business number or your GST number. And then you can go through that process there. You'll get your procurement business number and be able to then, you don't need it to look on our website, but to participate later you would. Where most businesses get hung up on the SRI is the GSIN codes. So it's the goods and services identification numbers. It is a bit it's a bit clunky, to be honest, going through those. But what I would recommend is go in and get started. And so even if you select sort of the highest level of the GSIN codes, which is basically identifying the industry in which you participate, start at the highest level. You can always go back in and refine it down to where the work you actually do, okay? It's handy to do that because it's part of your profile within the database. And when buyers go and look to see who can do that work, some will use the GSIN codes to actually start. So it's nice to go back in and refine it afterwards, but please don't let it hold you up. I've had a few businesses tell me that they've shied away from actually going in and doing their supplier registration because of the GSIN codes. Just go in and get it started and then go back and refine it. Okay, so now that we've looked a little bit at this and all the information that's in here, what I'd like to show you a little bit is how you can search for opportunities on our buy and sell website. Now, these opportunities are over $25,000. I'm going to get into the under $25,000 in a few minutes, but just want to show a little bit of how you can search within the buy and sell website, and then also create email notifications for yourself as well to see, and so you can get email alerts as to the industries that you are most interested in and what opportunities might be out there. So on the home screen here, you'll see a bunch of icons, and in the middle, we've got this one active. So this one is for active tenders. These are all active opportunities with the federal government that exist in the moment. So if I click on that, hopefully we'll get over to our next screen here. Here we go, a little slower today. Come on now. Anytime. Here we go. Okay. So what you'll see here is that there is 628 opportunities right now with the federal government, covering all kinds of different industries, goods, services, construction, powerhouse stabilization, laundry and dry cleaning, flooring services. This is just on the front page, plumbing services. And you can see they're all over the place. These happen to be in Europe. Community urine collector service for Quebec, for Correctional Service Canada. We've got Inuit cultural advisor for Correction Service Canada, etc. So you can see there's lots of different things that are in there that can be looked at. Now, once you've clicked on the active part, you now then can refine your search if you want to. So we can do it by location. So I can click here. And now if I want to look at just Alberta, so if you service Alberta, you don't do any, you don't provide services or goods into any other parts of Canada, you only want to focus on Alberta, well, I can click on here and I can see what's happening strictly in Alberta. I know that there's 142 opportunities in Alberta right now. Now, that doesn't mean that it's only for Alberta, okay? It is for Alberta is listed as a destination. So it could be that it's a national opportunity and Alberta is listed. It could also be that Alberta and, say, Quebec are the two destinations where, say, the goods are required. And so it's one thing when you're looking at opportunities to make sure to take a look at what the actual destinations are for the opportunity. But now we can look at just the 142 opportunities that are in Alberta itself. Now from here, if I wanted to take a look, I can now do a search. on what's active. So I can do different search terms. So as you can see, I've done a few search terms, you know, with different businesses looking at different things. So maybe I want to put in food and do a search on what food procurements are happening right now in Alberta. And we'll see if anything comes up here. And so we get 13 opportunities right now that include food. Now I'm not sure why this has come up this way. Interesting. But you can see they're not necessarily, because I chose food, it's going to be food related as well. So chemical residue testing for food. And well, spare parts stove. Okay, so household commercial furnishings, which is why it's nice to, when you do your search, especially by a search term, use different terms that are within your industry. I did a presentation once where it was, we did water filtration as one search. Nothing really came up. We did water filters, and that did come up. So you do want to use different search terms when you are when you're doing this. But here's one right here where we have a regional individual standing offer. So there's a standing offer here for miscellaneous groceries in Alberta. There's a catering services one that includes Alberta and looks like the prairies and the north as well. So there's these different opportunities that are in here. So you can do different searches for different items. It could be furniture, for example. And we'll see if anything comes up for furniture. So there's different ways of searching these different services, goods and services. You can, put in IT services and see what comes up there. So here, there's 4 opportunities for furniture in Alberta right now. Okay, so these are different ways to search. Now, if you want to create an alert for that, okay, what you do is you click right here on this email notification. So if I click on this email notification, it's going to take me to a new page, which is going to use the search criteria that I just established and now put it into an alert. So we can see that it's for furniture and it's for Alberta and it's for active notices. So if I put my email address in here, answer this question, if I click submit, I'm going to get an email saying, hey, you just signed up for these alerts. Did you? So you essentially go through that validation. Yes, I did. And once you do that, then anytime there is an active tender for Alberta with furniture, you'll get an email about it. Okay. And so you can do that for anything. And if you want, one of the neat tricks is once you refine your supplier registration profile, and if you use the GSIN codes, then you can put a GSIN code into the search. So if I go back to here, you can use a GSIN code so that whenever so maybe you are involved with the I'll do this one. Oh, come on now. So if I have this and I put this into so I put that GSIN code in there, then whenever a buyer uses that GSIN code, that's what's going to come up. Because we, as buyers, we use the GSIN codes whenever we set up our procurement. So instead of relying on the description of the, in the search, you can use the GSIN code. So once you refine it in your SRI, you can then copy those over into here, use them as a search, and then you could create the email notification. So you get an email notification for any time there is anytime there is something that is a GSIN code that you have in your profile. You always can stay up to date that way. Okay. So that's just one way of a couple ways there of searching around buy and sell, finding opportunities, doing different searches to be able to identify where there might be opportunities. The other thing I just want to note is that you can also, go back to the home screen, you can also look at it not just as a direct opportunity, but also sometimes from a supply chain opportunity. What else do you have? Maybe it's not selling directly to the federal government, but it's maybe working with someone who has gotten a contract with the federal government. One of my favorite examples is that I came across a business in Edmonton. They were really, really excited about their coffee, which is wonderful. I love coffee. But they had a fairly small volume, and they only had coffee. Now, we don't have coffee contracts. We have beverage contracts for an entire forces base or for an entire penitentiary through Correction Services Canada. So what we showed is you can search through, if you click on awards, that's going to take you to all the contracts that we've awarded. And so you can then search by the same search terms or the same GSIN codes and find who have we contracted with. Then look at contacting them. So if we're not a direct opportunity for you, you still might be able to use our information to find who we are contracting with and maybe work with them, which would get possibly opportunities indirectly to us, but also opportunities with their other contracts that they have. So with the coffee one, it became an opportunity not just to maybe sell through the contract holder to the federal government, but maybe to a hospital contract that contractor had, or a university contract, and maybe gain other opportunities that way. There's multiple ways to leverage the information that is in here. Okay. So wanted to touch on the low, what we call it, and forgive me the term, I'm really not a big fan of the term low dollar value, so that under $25,000 contracts, because there's many businesses out there that a $20,000 contract would be rather significant. But the reality is we buy jet planes and large ships and have really, really large contracts. So under $25,000 we refer to as lower dollar value. Now, when you're talking about lower dollar value and the under 25,000, as I mentioned, those are going to be done by the departments themselves. So they are not going to appear on buy and sell. They're not going to be competed through these avenues. Okay, they're going to be done really through the departments themselves, and they're going to be done mostly through either direct contracting, or a lot of departments have a 3-quote rule. So it's essentially calling 3 businesses to get a quote on the opportunities. So it's really important to really communicate with departments that you are available to do the work. A really good example that I like to use is down in Suffield with CFB Suffield near Medicine Hat, and the work that gets done on the base there. Because a lot of the work that they do, yes, they have big contracts for sure, but when they need to go and source something right away and it's small, they'll go directly to the businesses that are available. And so they use a great presentation down there where they talk about all the different things that are really our contracts. So they buy plywood, and they buy fence posts, and they buy wiring, and they hire actors and actresses to help with training. They hire makeup artists, and these all are contracts. Now, they're all dollar values that are under $25,000. So they're all contracts that the Department of National Defense through CFB Suffield is doing directly to businesses. So it's really important for the businesses to make themselves known to the departments that they're available to do this work. I would suggest when it comes to you and your business that you would want to communicate directly with the departments and let them know, especially if following Mike's advice about being part of the procurement strategy for Aboriginal business and being on that directory list, to be able to call up a department and let them know that you are available for this work and you're part of that directory, then that helps them realize that you are available to do that kind of work that they're going to go and seek directly. And it would also help them with their targets with regards to Indigenous procurement. So it's wonderful to be able to use a bit of our language when you're speaking with us and let them know that, hey, I'm on this directory and I'm available to do this work. Now, the question I often get is, how do we contact these departments? How do we even reach them? It's not easy. I'm not going to lie. I mean, we tend to be a bit shy. Departments tend to be a little shy when it comes to working with or getting a phone call from a supplier. But all the businesses I've talked to many, and I've had many examples come back saying, you know what, I called them up. It took a bit of time. I had to call. I had to be persistent. You know, it's a little bit of that self-marketing, but I was able to reach someone, and I've actually earned a contract. So it does work, and it is possible, and you have every right to contact them. The way to do it is we actually have an online phone book, and it's called the Government Electronic Directory Service. So if you Google Government Electronic Directory Service, or GEDS, as we call it for short, GEDS, then you can start searching for departments in there. So you can look at it from a department listing perspective. So you can click on Browse Department Listing, and it'll pull up almost every department. Now, I say almost every department because Department of National Defense is not in there. Our intelligence community is not in there. There are some departments that certainly from security reasons are not. But as you can see, there are lots and lots and lots and lots of departments that are available. Okay, well, actually, some of National Defense is in there. Okay, they're just not all of them. So these are all the different ones you can reach out. Now, I like using Parks Canada as an example because they're really well organized in the directory. So if you wanted to inquire about or let them know about what capabilities you have that may be suited for, say, one of the national parks, you can actually click right through. So if I click on the operations directorate, I can then click on Alberta, and then I can actually go all the way to the Banff Field Unit. And I can see who works in the Banff Field Unit, okay? And then I can even get it further down into the Field Unit office. And so you can see who the person is, their phone number, and then what their role is within the department. So that is one way of being able to sort of filter down sort of that tree as you go down to see who works in the department and who might be best to reach out to based on your good or service that you provide. You know, it may not be the fire crew member, but it might be someone that works, it might be the realty officer, might be appropriate for what you do. Or maybe it's the equine specialist having to do with horses. Maybe you're in that industry, or sales and market development could be there. So it's a way of trying to narrow down who to reach out to within the department. Okay. Now, one other way to approach it, if I go back to the beginning here, one other way to approach it, we can't search geographically, but you can search by phone number. So if I put 403 as an example and hit search, what I should get is every single phone number that has 403 in it. Now, that's also going to include sort of a 613-403. So it's not going to be super exact, but it will give you the area codes that have the 403 area code. And then from here, you can see which departments are actually located in Calgary, for example. So Western Economic Diversification, Defense Construction Canada, Canada Revenue Agency. So you can sort of identify from here what departments you may want to start reaching out to, and then again, who some of the people are within that department. So I know we're getting to the end here, and usually I warn Perry and company to wrap me on the knuckles to stop talking, because I will keep going because there's just so many things to talk about. But hopefully that gave a little bit of an overview of buy and sell and how to navigate that space, and that when it comes to under $25,000 procurement, you really want to reach out to the departments. They define their requirements, they determine what they need to buy, and in under $25,000, they're going to go and buy it. So communicating directly with the departments is the route to go in order to find out what it is that they need to buy, what it is they want to contract for, and letting them know that you are available for that kind of contracting. So I'm going to wrap it up there for now. if there's any interest in having a deeper conversation about this, please reach out. I'm happy to have a one-on-one conversation with any business and go into this a little bit further. Thanks so much. I'll leave it unlocked or unmuted.
All right, thank you very much, Kris. Yeah, as you guys can see, there's a lot of information on that buy and sell website. And when I got started with Business Link alone, I'm still finding my way around there. But you know, as some of you folks come on here, you're probably leaders, economic development officers, or established business owners. And it really is helpful to get familiar with that buy and sell website and navigate your way around. And Kris is always available. He told me he was available 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, to give him a call, send him an email. But he is the real hero biscuit when it comes to navigating around this buy and sell website, knowing where to go and knowing the ins and outs. So I would encourage you to reach out to Kris and his team, and he can certainly help you guys. And like Kris mentioned, he's available to come around to your communities and do a one-on-one presentation or to a small group. And of course, this is when the COVID is over and done with. And again, I would encourage you to go to the Business Link website as well. There's a lot of information on there for the younger entrepreneurs to get started in business. And like I mentioned, you guys are heroes and champions in your community. And if you can point these younger entrepreneurs in the right direction, then I think we're all going in the right direction here. And I think Mike pointed out there's some $20 billion a year or so available from the federal government in terms of contracting and procuring services. And that's a tremendous amount of money. I don't exactly know what's available in terms of in Alberta, but I'm sure it's a big chunk. There's a lot of stuff on there as well. The one other thing, Mike and Kris, I wanted to point out is under that buy and sell website, there was a link to the procurement strategy for Aboriginal business. And there's 2 8-minute videos on there that really highlight the whole program. And I've looked at those a few times. I've pointed people in the direction. It really explains about the procurement strategy for Aboriginal website. And it also explains the criteria a little bit more. It's very helpful. They have a step-by-step tutorial on how to register your business, which I think is excellent. And Kris's presentation usually lasts about half a day. He did it like in 30 minutes. So Kris and I and Mike are going to be hopefully doing more monthly or bi-weekly little series on doing business with the federal government. So if you guys would like to join, we'll make sure those are available to you as well. I think we're right at the end of our hour. So that's all I had. I wanted to thank everybody for participating today. And everybody's coordinates, I think, are put on the website in case you want to reach out to any of us folks. So I will leave it at that. Again, thank you, Kris. Thank you, Mike. And thanks to all of the participants. And I'd also like to take a quick second to acknowledge Jolette, who has been working behind the scenes here to make everything happen. And she's with Business Link. Thank you so much, Jolette. You did a fantastic job today keeping us guys in line. So having said that, thank you very much, everybody, for participating today. And stay COVID free, stay healthy. Okay, bye for now, folks. Thank you.
Thank you.